They say monsters are made, not born. But what if the blueprint was carved in silence, long before the first scream? Dawson Creek, Mississippi, 1997. The air was thick with heat and secrets. 9-year-old Malik Turner crouched beneath the floorboards of his grandmother's collapsing house, knees pulled to his chest, breath held like a prayer. Above him, screams, not his own, not this time. His mother's voice cracking like glass, followed by the sound of his uncle's fists finding their way home again. But this scream, it didn't sound like pain, it sounded like fear, the kind that freezes your soul before your feet. And that night, Malik didn't flinch. He just listened. Because by then, pain didn't scare him anymore. They called it a troubled home. That's what the papers would later say. But what do you call a childhood where the walls rot before your body does? A place where grown men break boys in half and women fold into silence because survival doesn't leave room for healing? Malik learned how to be quiet, how to disappear, not because he wanted to, but because nobody ever came looking for him. Foster care wasn't a safety net. It was a revolving door of broken promises, broken rules, and broken kids. By 14, Malik had been in 6 homes. In one of them, the man made him sleep in a crawl space, said it was for discipline. Malik never cried after that. The state didn't ask questions, didn't care why he drew pictures of mouths screaming or shadows with no faces. They gave him pills and locked the doors, called it a behavioral episode. But Malik called it peace, the only kind he knew. Years passed. The boy grew taller, quieter, and more distant. By the time he turned 17, Malik had learned to blend in. He said yes, ma'am, when he needed to, smiled just enough, held his madness like a secret scripture no one would ever read. Then the girls started going missing. Not white girls, not girls with the mayor's last name, but black girls, poor girls, forgotten girls. The first was Kira, 15. Her aunt, Ms. Bernice, sensed that something was amiss, filed the report, called the news, posted flyers. But when they found her body behind a dumpster, no one even identified her. The report said Jane Doe. The police said probably drugs or street work. Ms. Bernice said her name was Kira, and she was loved. More girls vanished, a pattern formed, but only if you were looking, and most folks weren't. But Detective Amina Ross was. Black woman, mid-30s, sharp eyes, sharper instincts. She started connecting dots that the department didn't even see. Same neighborhoods, same shadows, same silence. But every time she brought it up, they shut her down. No serial killer, they said. Black men don't do that kind of crime, they whispered. And Malik kept walking unnoticed. Because Malik knew how to disappear. The church pantry loved him, quiet man, always helping. He passed out food on Sundays, tape recorders on Wednesdays, and kept secrets in the basement. That's where he kept Zaria, 17, ran from a group home, had a nervous stutter and a broken tooth, but eyes that still believed in something. She said the house smelled like old candles and wet wood, said there were drawings on the walls, voices playing on loop, girls crying out for their mamas. One night, she escaped. Bloodied hands, splinters in her feet. She flagged down a patrol car 2 blocks away. But when she told them who hurt her, they laughed, said she was high, said, "Ain't no black serial killers, sweetheart." And then they took her back. Zaria never walked out again. And Malik? He watched from the porch as they returned his victim, smiled, thanked them, closed the door. He kept them all, under the floorboards where he once hid. 7 girls, 7 stories no one believed until it was too late. They didn't notice until he took Nayla Thomas. She was different. College student, activist, had a father, Jeremiah Thomas, who refused to be ignored. He posted flyers, marched the streets, and when the police shrugged him off, he investigated himself. "Y'all ain't gonna do nothing," he told them. "Then I will." And he did. Followed a tip, a neighbor's whisper, a man with a brown sweater, a basement nobody entered. Called Detective Ross. She listened. The raid came 3 days later, and what they found was hell, bodies, tapes, walls covered in drawings of girls with hollow eyes. Malik didn't resist, just stared, said nothing. And yet, everything about him screamed a story we still refuse to tell. They called him a monster, said he was evil, said he was the face of darkness. But what if the darkness was behind him? What if the monster was the silence that raised him, the system that lost him, the community that failed to protect him, or the girls? Detective Ross sat in her car that night, eyes full of tears she didn't let fall, and Jeremiah Thomas held his daughter's necklace, wondering if grief ever becomes justice. In prison, Malik finally spoke. "They only looked for me when the one with the daddy disappeared," he said. "The rest? They let me keep them. And that's the part that hurts the most. Not that he killed them, but he was never hiding. He moved among us, washed dishes, sang hymns, waited in line at the bus stop next to women holding their daughters' hands. And no one ever looked twice. They said it was over when they locked Malik Turner away, but stories like his don't end with a cell. They bleed into the walls, into the silence, into the spaces no one ever searched. Because behind every girl he took was another girl the world forgot. And behind every scream he recorded was a whisper from a system that never wanted to hear them in the first place. 6 months later, Detective Amina Ross couldn't sleep, not since the tapes. She still heard the voices at night. Zaria, Nayla, Kira, soft, trembling, asking why no one came. And it wasn't just the voices, it was the notebook she found under Malik's bed. Not drawings, not ramblings, but names. 13 names. Only 7 bodies were recovered. The department closed the case, said justice had been served. But Amina, she knew better. She started visiting the shelters, the corners, the parks after dark, asking questions the city didn't want asked. And that's when she met Nene. She couldn't have been more than 16, hair tied up in a red scarf, mismatched shoes, eyes that had seen too much for a child. Amina offered her a bottle of water. She wouldn't take it, but she asked softly, "Are you the cop looking for the girls?" Amina nodded. Nena stared at her, quiet, unblinking, then whispered, "Malik wasn't the only one." And just like that, the ground shifted. See, monsters don't grow in isolation. They multiply in the dark. They watch. They learn. They take notes. Nene told her about the house on Grady Street. Said it was boarded up. The girls went there and didn't come out. Said Malik wasn't always alone when he picked them up. Sometimes, another man drove. Amina took it to her captain. He laughed. "You chasing ghosts now, Ross?" "Case is closed. You got your guy." But the deeper she dug, more cracks appeared. Surveillance footage. 1 car, 2 men, Malik and someone older. Clean-shaven, glasses, always in the background. And just like that, the image of a lone madman began to fracture. Meanwhile, Jeremiah Thomas, Nayla's father, started organizing vigils. But they weren't just for the girls who died. They were for the girls who disappeared and never made the news. He stood in front of City Hall with a bullhorn and grief in his chest. "My daughter had a name, but so did the others. You don't get to pick whose pain you remember." People clapped. The mayor didn't show. Back in lockup, Malik stopped speaking. He wouldn't eat, wouldn't talk to the prison therapist. But one day, he asked to see Amina. They gave her 15 minutes, no recording, no weapons. Just her and the man who'd buried 7 lives beneath his feet. She sat down. He didn't look up. She said nothing. And then, he whispered, "He's still out there." Chills ran through her spine, but she held her voice steady. "Who?" Malik looked up, smiled, empty, like the shadow of a man who once dreamed of being whole. "I wasn't the first," he said. "I was taught." The name he gave was Leon Caldwell, a former youth pastor, church volunteer, mentor at a boys' group home in the 90s. But there was no record, no mugshot, no address. Just one incident, 1998. A foster boy accused him of abuse. Case dismissed. The boy disappeared. The boy's name? Malik Turner. Everything began to make sense, and nothing did. Because how do you trace pain that's been recycled, repackaged, turned into gospel? How do you chase a predator who hides behind good deeds in God's name? Amina found herself staring at old photos, church groups, food banks, and in the corner of nearly every image, a man with a gentle smile, gray suit, eyes that never smiled back. Leon Caldwell, still out there, still active. The police wouldn't open a new case. Too much heat, too much risk. So Amina called Jeremiah, and together, they started their investigation. They interviewed survivors, the ones who escaped, the ones who never told. And every story carried the same thread, a voice that soothed, a promise of help, a ride in a van, and then darkness. It wasn't about sensationalism, it was about truth. And the truth was brutal. This wasn't just Malik's story. This was a network of silence, of complicit adults, of police who ignored red flags, of a city that counted black girls only after they died. One night, Jeremiah got a call. No caller ID, voice trembling. I saw him at the shelter downtown. He was handing out blankets. Jeremiah didn't wait. He grabbed his keys, called Amina, heart pounding, because if Leon Caldwell was real, that meant the story wasn't over. They pulled up to the shelter together. It was raining, dim streetlight. People huddled near crates and burned out barrels. And there, across the lot, a figure in a long gray coat. He turned slowly, smiled, then disappeared into the alley. Amina drew her weapon. Jeremiah shouted. But by the time they reached the corner, he was gone, just like a ghost, just like before. Now, the question isn't who killed those girls. How many didn't make it to the news? How many never had fathers to fight for them? How many more Maliks are being molded right now, under our noses, by the same man who disappeared into the dark? Amina stares at her board. 13 names, only 7 bodies, no closure, just echoes. And Malik, he sits in his cell, draws again. This time, a man with a clerical collar, eyes like glass, hands stretched wide, and underneath the words, "He made me." The deeper you dig into a wound, the more it bleeds. And some wounds, they don't heal, they hide. 3 weeks after that alley chase, Amina Ross still saw his face. The man in the gray coat, the man Malik called teacher. The man the system never documented because the system protected him. Leon Caldwell, youth pastor, community mentor, phantom, no bank records, no home, no phone, just stories whispered by broken girls too scared to remember. Amina and Jeremiah built their case file. Paper clippings, anonymous tips, old sermons on dusty VHS tapes, and buried between footage of food drives and charity car washes. There he was, Leon. His voice was syrup thick and sweet. "Our children are God's most precious work," he'd say, smiling into the camera. But Amina had heard another voice years ago, on one of Malik's tapes. The same cadence, the same slow, deliberate tone. Only this time it whispered, "No one's coming for you." They took the new evidence to the department, and once again, got silence, then something worse. Amina's badge was pulled for unauthorized investigation. Jeremiah's house was vandalized 2 nights later. The message spray painted across the porch, "Stop digging." But truth doesn't die easily, especially when it's already buried 7 feet under. One night, Amina received a flash drive in her mailbox. No return address, just one video file, time-stamped 2004. She played it, static, then a grainy shot of a basement. A girl no older than 13 was tied to a rusted chair, and behind the camera, a voice, calm, software familiar. "Say your name for me." The girl whimpered. My name's Danielle." A pause. "Good girl, God sees you." Then laughter. Not from the man, but from someone else in the room. Another voice. Malik's. She paused the video, stared at the frozen frame. A blur of a second, a man stepped into view. Clean-shaven, clerical collar, eyes like winter. Leon. It wasn't just Malik. He wasn't acting alone. He was auditioning, practicing. And Caldwell? He was the director. Now it made sense. Why did Malik build the shrine? Why did he record every scream? Why he said, "He made me"? He was preserving something, documenting it, like proof, like worship. Jeremiah stared at the paused frame, trembling. "That's the basement on Clay Street," he said. "The church owned it for years, burned down in '09. Amina grabbed her keys, didn't wait for a warrant, didn't tell the department. She needed to see for herself. They arrived just past midnight. The lot was overgrown. The concrete cracked. Ashes scattered like bones. But in the back, an old cellar door, rusted, buried beneath weeds and debris. They forced it open. The air that rose smelled like time had stopped. Inside, the walls were scorched black. But some things had survived. A rusted chair, a single melted tape recorder, and a wooden beam. With 13 names scratched into it. 13, the same number from Malik's notebook. Amina stepped closer, running her fingers across the carvings. And that's when she noticed the last name. Nene. She froze. The girl from the shelter. The one who warned her. The one who vanished 2 weeks ago. She hadn't run. She'd been taken. Again. Jeremiah's phone buzzed. A text. No contact name. Just a photo. A blurry image. Of Nena. Bound. Terrified. And behind her, a cross. Burned. Twisted. And at the bottom of the image, a location tag. Glory Revival Ministries, Adiyam. But Glory Revival? That church burned down 6 years ago. Everyone said it was abandoned. So why was there fresh activity? Why was Caldwell sending invitations? Amina backed away from the cellar, her heart thudding. Because this wasn't over. Not even close. Leon Caldwell wasn't hiding. He was waiting. And the message was clear. Come find me, if you dare. Now the question isn't who will stop him. It's how far are you willing to go when the devil hides in plain sight? When your badge is stripped? When the city turns its back? When the next girl won't make it to the morning? Amina looks at the clock. She has 47 minutes. Glory Revival Ministries. Condemned. Forgotten. But this morning, alive. The sun hadn't yet risen, but Detective Amina Ross stood in front of what used to be a sanctuary. Paint peeling, stained glass shattered, a dead place. But she felt it breathing, like something inside was waiting. 5:59 a.m. No backup, no warrant, just her and Jeremiah Thomas, still holding the photo of Nene like it was his only tether to sanity. They exchanged a glance. He whispered, "We don't leave without her." She nodded and they stepped inside. The smell hit first, mildew, burnt wood, something metallic. Like the air remembered screams. Their flashlights cut through the dark. Dust swirled like spirits. Pews overturned, hymnals torn. A shattered baptismal font lay in pieces near the altar. But in the far back, a door, still intact, padlocked, fresh chain. Someone had been here recently. Amina pulled bolt cutters from her bag, snapped it open. The door creaked, and behind it, a stairwell descending into pitch black. Jeremiah hesitated. She didn't. Down they went. The basement was massive. Wider than the church above, a single dim bulb flickered overhead, casting long shadows over the walls. And those walls, lined with photos, girls, smiling, missing, some confirmed dead, others, still open cases. Amina felt her knees go weak. They weren't just victims. They were trophies. And then the audio started from a speaker in the corner, a soft voice, gentle, reverent. Leon Caldwell. "You finally came," it said, "just in time for the sermon." Then laughter, slow, crooked, mocking. Amina drew her weapon. Jeremiah gripped a crowbar in shaking hands. And at the end of the basement, a curtain, heavy, black, slightly swaying. Behind it, movement. They approached slowly. Amina whispered, "Stay behind me." But Jeremiah stepped forward. Rage had a stronger grip than fear. He yanked the curtain open. And there she was, Nana, bound to a chair, eyes wide, gagged. Tears streaked her face, but she was alive. Amina rushed to her and started untying the ropes. And that's when Jeremiah saw it. On the wall behind her, a countdown timer, 00317, and beneath it, a camera. Streaming. Amina's hands froze. She looked around. Tripwires, sensors. And that hum was electricity. This wasn't just a lair, it was a trap. And then the speaker crackled again. "You were supposed to save them, Detective Ross, but you're just like the rest of them. Too late." Jeremiah shouted into the dark, "Come out, coward, face me." But only the timer responded. 00254. They had less than 3 minutes. Amina scanned the room, found the power source. An old circuit box is near the ceiling, too high. But Jeremiah grabbed a metal chair, climbed up. She shouted, "Be careful." He didn't answer. He pulled at the wires. Sparks flew. The screen blinked. The timer froze. 00217. Amina rushed to Nene and freed the last knot. Nene collapsed into her arms, breathing, barely, whispering one word. "Upstairs." Amina leaned close. "What's upstairs?" Nene coughed and then said, "More." They turned to run, but as they reached the stairwell, boom, the door above them slammed shut, locked, and the speaker came alive again. This time, no laughter, just breathing. And then Caldwell's voice, low, sharp, close. "You found my basement. Now let me show you my choir." A trap door opened in the far corner, and the sound that rose, children's voices, singing, off-key, broken, like a hymn sung in chains. Amina raised her flashlight, and what she saw in the darkness stopped her breath. 8 girls, alive, in cages. One of them, no older than 8, looked straight at her and mouthed, "Help us!" Jeremiah screamed, "We need to get them out!" Amina shouted into the radio. No signal. She kicked the cage. Locks were welded shut. They needed tools, time, backup, but they had none, just them, and a madman is watching. The basement lights went red. A voice whispered through the ceiling, "You opened the door. Now you finish the sermon." And then the floor began to shake. Jeremiah turned. The wall behind them was moving, opening, and in the darkness beyond, a figure stepped out, slow, calm, wearing a clerical collar, holding a Bible in one hand and a knife in the other. Leon Caldwell, older, eyes dead, smile hollow. "You wanted to find me," he said, stepping forward. "Now tell me, are you ready to be saved?" Red light, thick silence, 8 caged girls breathing in fear, and Leon Caldwell stepping through the hidden door like the devil returning to his pulpit. He smiled like a man who'd never been touched by consequence. "Isn't it beautiful?" he said softly, looking around. "All that pain, and still they sing." Detective Amina Ross kept her weapon trained on him, but her hand trembled, not from fear, but fury. Behind her, Jeremiah Thomas gripped the crowbar tightly, his eyes locked on the man who turned his daughter's name into a headline. Leon opened the Bible. Inside, not scripture, photos, Zaria, Kira, Nene, girls reduced to pages. Each was marked with a red thumbprint. "You came for justice," Leon said, "but justice died a long time ago." He raised the knife. Amina fired, one shot, straight through the shoulder. He staggered, dropped the blade, but laughed. "You can't stop what's already begun," he hissed. "I taught boys like Malik because no one else would. I raised them in truth. This world forgets them. I gave them purpose." Amina stepped forward, voice cracking. "You broke them." Behind her, the girls cried out. The cages, wired to a battery, set to detonate if the wrong wires were pulled. Leon had wired it all. If he went down, so did they. Jeremiah ran to the panel, frantic, sweating. "I've worked electrical," he muttered. "I think I can disarm it." But there were no labels, no instructions, just wires and time. Leon smiled again, bleeding now. "You think saving a few will erase the rest?" Amina stared at him, heart pounding. Then, something shifted. She lowered her gun and turned her back to him. "Jeremiah," she said gently, "pull the green and yellow together." "How do you know?" "Because Leon's patterns are always the same. Order, control. He'd never wire the trigger to something mixed. He'd keep his death separate from his design." Jeremiah paused, looked at Nenny. "Then I pulled the wires." Silence, no explosion. The lights turned white, and one by one, the cages clicked open. The girls ran to Amina. Jeremiah collapsed in relief. And Leon? He tried to run, but Jeremiah tackled him. Hard, held him down, and for a second, just a second, he thought about ending his life. Amina walked over and knelt beside him. Leon whispered, "Go ahead." But she didn't. She cuffed him and said, "No more forgotten girls, not on my watch." The arrest made headlines. Youth pastor accused of orchestrating killings with former foster children. 13 survivors identified, more expected. Local detective honored for saving 8 girls. But none of that brought back the dead. Malik Turner never spoke again. He took his own life in prison. Left behind one note. It read, "I'm sorry. He made me forget I was human." Nena testified in court. So did Zaria, barely able to speak. Each girl had her name, own story, own pain. And finally, people listened. The church was torn down. A new shelter was built in its place, run by women who survived, for girls still fighting to be seen. Detective Amina Ross returned to work quietly. No press, no ceremony. But every year on the date she found the basement, she visits the graves, leaves sunflowers, says their names out loud, one by one, because silence is how it started, and silence will not be how it ends. As for Jeremiah, he still speaks, still marches, still calls out names at city council meetings. Not just his daughters, but the ones you never heard. And now, that's up to you. Because Leon Caldwell wasn't a monster in the shadows. He was a man in plain sight, well-dressed, well-spoken, well-connected. Just like the system that covered for him. The real question isn't how this happened, it's Dash. Would you have seen him? Would you have believed the girls? Would you have fought if it wasn't your child? And if it was, what would you have done? Drop your answer in the comments. If this story shook something in you, share it, say her name. Fight for the ones still unheard, because pain is buried in silence becomes a sermon for the next monster. Stories like this need light. Don't look away. The darkness is still out there, waiting. Subscribe for more true crime stories like this